Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our GED Open Day webinar this evening, and thank you for joining us. Homeschooling has seen exponential growth over the last few years, and due to COVID, unfortunately, many new parents have been contacting us as they investigate homeschooling. My name is Sean Swartz. I'm the CEO of SK Education Solutions. We are the official office of the GED in Africa. And I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of our new GED students and parents throughout Africa that are joining us this evening. As a brief introduction to what the GED is, if you don't know already, it's a testing program that makes it possible to earn the equivalent of a secondary school leaving certificate to facilitate one of two things. Firstly, employment, and secondly, entry into further studies. The GED was created in 1942 in the USA as a second chance opportunity, and today, way over 20 million people have already passed and graduated and received their GED diploma. The GED represents a new paradigm. It's the new world, and so it's one in which critical thinking, problem solving, and close reading skills are required. There's no longer having to learn anything off by heart. That's the old school. In addition to this, with the inclusion of evidence-based writing, students are expected to demonstrate their reading and writing skills. It's no longer acceptable just to write an opinion piece on something. Students actually have to analyze, evaluate, and think and develop a claim supported by the evidence drawn from what they've read. So as you can hear, the GED is future-focused. It's designed to provide information about candidates' readiness that is directly tied to the next steps in their preparation and training for the world to come. Today, we are extremely privileged to have Angela as well as Lindsay with us. Angela will be speaking first. She is an expert in the GED as well as a highly experienced GED tutor. She has been tutoring GED students for many years. I'm sure many of you have actually had a chance to already speak with her in some way or other. She specializes in online tutoring and has helped literally hundreds, if not thousands, of students to get through their GED, to pass. And we are live on YouTube. We have made the comments facility available for you to post questions, and I can see you're already posting some, so please keep doing that. Feel free to type your questions in the comments facility. We will be monitoring these questions, and we'll try our best to ensure that we answer your questions. So, Angela, thank you so much for agreeing to give us and your listeners some study and exam tips. And to begin with, I would like to ask you to please give us some tips on studying towards your GED.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everybody. It's great being here with you today. Yes, as Sean said, the GED is all about critical reading, critical thinking. These are the skills that you use in everyday life. So you don't have to learn the GED like a parrot. There are some instances where I will suggest that my students learn some things that will help them in the exam, because some of the way that they pose the questions in the exam, if you understand the work a little bit better, it's going to be easier for you to answer that question. For instance, social studies. In social studies, they actually take excerpts directly out of the US Constitution. Now, they can be very difficult to read. So if you go and you learn the different branches of the US government, if you understand the powers of each branch of the US government. And I actually ask my students to go and learn that. Because when you get a question and the question says, the question mentions unconstitutional, immediately you think the judicial branch. If it mentions appointments, immediately you think president or you think the legislative branch. So it's very important for me that the students actually learn that. Other things in social studies, because I think social studies is also one of the subjects that a lot of the students struggle with, specifically because it's US history, it's world history, also world economics, but also very focused on US history and US economics. And students get very nervous because they say, well, I don't know the US history, I don't know the US economics. Again, critical reading, okay? So you get a passage, you have to answer a question on that passage. If you do familiarize yourself with the different kinds of economies that there are, supply and demand, mean, median, and mode, these are used for statistics. If you understand that, these are such easy marks in the exam, then sometimes you can actually even answer the question without reading the passage. Another tip that I can give to students is to learn to read the question first. Remember, the GED is all about analyzing what you're reading. Read your question, understand what the question is asking you. Then you go and look for the answer. The biggest mistake that a lot of the students do is they jump in and they go and read the passage first. Now, in reading and in social studies, it's a very long passage when you get to the exam. So if you're going to jump in and you're going to go and read that whole long passage first, you're going to go to the question, you're going to read the question, and you're going to end up going back to the passage, reading the passage again. So you're going to be wasting a lot of time. If you read your question first, if you look at the 4 possible answers, then you go to the passage and you start reading the passage. You might get the answer in the first paragraph, which means that you don't have to read right through that passage. You can then move on. You can go to the next question, read the next question. Make sure you understand the question. Okay, understand what the question's asking you. I think in a lot of instances, and this is where the critical reading comes in, the question has got a not in it, and the student doesn't see that not. So they go and pick an answer that is supported in the passage or in the graph, where the question said not supported. So make sure you look at your question, make sure you understand your question before you actually go and look for the answer. As far as reading is concerned, the RLA consists of reading, language, and writing. Now, reading is 60% of the final score. So this tells you that reading is very, very important. If you fail reading, you fail the whole RLA subject. Writing is 20%, language is 20% of your final score. So if you're struggling with reading, if your English is not up to scratch, I always suggest, please read as much as you can. Find as much reading material as you can. The more you read, the better you're going to get. And while you're reading, practice these skills. Practice to look for the main idea. Practice your analyzing skills. Practice to look at opinions versus facts, because this is also what the GED is about. The GED teaches students to look critically at something and to say, but hold on, these are not credible facts. So you learn about bias, the different kinds of bias that you get. You have to learn how to see if somebody's actually being biased. Because if somebody's being biased, if they're using propaganda, they're using fallacies, they're actually trying to take your attention off what the actual argument is. And the GED wants to see that you understand this. So this is very important when you're reading. Try and pick these things out. Okay, and make sure you understand it. So also propaganda, you get different kinds of propaganda. Go and learn them. Learn what the different kinds of propaganda is, because you will get a question in the exam that will give you a scenario and they will ask you, what type of propaganda is this? So you're going to have to identify that propaganda. You're going to have to identify what type of fallacy that is. So yes, read as much as you can. Also, Google practice tests. The more practice tests you do, the better you're going to get at this. The better you're going to get at answering these questions. There are a myriad of practice tests on the internet. Go and Google them. Do as many as what you can. Try and do 2, 3 every single day, over and above your online learning or from whichever medium you're learning. Do practice tests as much as what you can. Then we get to the essay. Now, it's also one of the subjects that the students struggle with quite a lot. And this is in the writing, understanding how to write this essay. This is an argumentative essay. It's based on credible facts. And also, so we call it argumentation. Within argumentation, you get credible facts, you get facts that are not credible. So outdated evidence is not credible facts. Also, then you get bias, different types of bias. You get opinions. And this is what the GED want to see in your essay. They want to see that you understand what these type of argumentation is. So you need to unpack the prompts. You will get 2 prompts. Each prompt, it will be talking about a specific subject. The one will support it, the other one will oppose it. You need to go now and you need to look at all this argumentation. And the best way to do it is when you get into the exam, you're going to have a pen and paper. Draw a line down the center of the paper. Remember, you cannot write an essay without planning. So your first 10 minutes, you have to plan. And by planning, I mean picking out all the argumentation. So you draw a line down the center of the paper. On the one side, you write supporting argumentation. On the other side, you write opposing argumentation. And then you quickly just jot down all the argumentation. You jot down, if they're giving you, if you see that they're only showing you one side of a story, this is being biased. Okay, why are they only showing you one side of the story? So you quickly jot down all the evidence, all the argumentation in the first 10 minutes, and then you have to go and look at that argumentation, and based on that, you need to decide which of those passages has got the best supporting argument. And then you're going to have to write about it. So the next 20 to 25 minutes, you're going to now paraphrase, not summarize. This is also one of the biggest problems that the students struggle with, is that they tend to just summarize what's in the passages. This is not what the GED want to see. They don't want to see that you can summarize. The GED want to see that you can analyze what you've read and that you can paraphrase. By paraphrasing, I mean putting it in your own words, where you're now going to talk about this. So your introductory paragraph will introduce what the 2 passages are arguing about. It will then give a slight overview, because remember, when you've started writing, you already know which passage has got the best supporting evidence. So you're going to give a slight overview, and you're going to say, passage 1 is being very biased, whereas passage 2 has got much more credible evidence. And then you're going to state a claim. Now, your claim is which passage has got the strongest argument. So you're going to say, therefore, passage 1 has got the stronger argument. Now your claim becomes your main idea. And I think with the students that have gone through the reading already will understand what main idea is. Main idea is the most important part of your essay. That main idea needs to be carried through your essay. It needs to be filtered through. It always needs to be supported. No ambiguity. Okay, you've got to stick to your main idea, and you've got to explain why this passage has got the stronger claim. So you write 2 body paragraphs. I would say an introductory paragraph, 2 paragraphs in the middle, which is your body. Okay, talking about all this argumentation. And then finally your conclusion, where you just wrap everything up. If you've learned something out of it, say what you've learned out of it. Okay, say, oh, I thought gambling was a terrible thing, but after seeing all of this, I realized that it can be good for the economy if it's structured, if it's controlled. Okay, and then again, in your conclusion, make sure that you mention your main idea again, guys. Your main idea is your most important part of your essay, and that is your claim. Okay, so restate it again in your conclusion. Remember your transition words, the GED. Look at transition words. However, on the other hand, those are good transition words. They don't really penalize you on spelling, as long as they can understand what you're trying to say, but you do get penalized on grammar and you do get penalized on punctuation. So always leave 5 minutes at the end of your essay to quickly read through your essay, to try and fix up those little mistakes. And yes, that is basically what I can tell you as far as the essay is concerned. I think that is one of the big concerns that the students have and that they struggle with at the end of the day. The other subject is science. Science, I think a lot of the students overthink science. It's not as difficult as what you think it is, guys. It's also critical reading, critical thinking. If you've completed English and you've completed social studies, you've already learned a lot of those skills that you have to apply to science. So it's not rocket science. You're going to get a passage, you're going to answer a question on that passage. So please don't overthink it. In science, I always suggest that the students familiarize themselves with the scientific method, okay, that they understand a hypothesis. Remember, a hypothesis has to be precise. You will say that this will increase by so much, and it cannot be partially correct. Okay, it's either correct or it's wrong. You proved your hypothesis or you disproved it. Cannot be partially correct. And it's one of the things that does come up in the questions is it's partially correct. No. Okay, it's not. There's no such thing as partially correct. It has to be correct or incorrect. There's a little bit of math in the science. We have to calculate probability. So, you know, that you're going to, and these are the things that you use in math also. Probability, you use mean, median, and mode statistics. You also have to make sure that you understand that, and that you've actually learned in social studies already. So you're going to use that in your math and in your science at the end of the day. So yeah, that from a science point of view, that is what I can suggest to you. And then math is math at the end of the day. I always say, get your groundwork, understand the groundwork properly. Order of operations. If you don't understand your order of operations, you're not going to be able to do the higher math. Very important. Understand your fractions. These are easy, and they're easy marks. Make sure that you understand them. Fractions, decimals, percentages. That's your groundwork that you've got to make sure. And if you don't understand it, don't just skip it. Because if you're going to skip it and you move up to the next level, you're not going to be able to answer those questions. The math, also critical reading, critical thinking. Your questions get asked like situations in everyday life. And you then have to pick out the numbers from this scenario that they've given you. There is some quadratic equations in the math which falls under core math. systems of equations, quadratic equations, functions, those become very, very difficult. And students that are really struggling with math really, really struggle with the quadratic equations. And I suggest to those students, because what happens is that they just focus on the quadratic equations and then on the functions, and they don't focus on the easier stuff. And they can actually comfortably pass the GED exam without being able to do a quadratic equation. So if the student is struggling immensely with the quadratic equations, let them try it, but then rather focus on the other stuff, the stuff that is easier marks for them at the end of the day, and it doesn't put them under so much pressure. Because I think math is one of the subjects that most of the students struggle with. So if you feel you cannot do a quadratic equation, let it go. Let it go. Focus on the other stuff, because you can pass comfortably with that. And that's me, Sean.
Thanks, Angela. I think what you've just given everybody is like gold. And it's all being recorded, and we will be sending it out to everybody at a later stage. And I highly recommend that everybody goes back and listens and makes notes on what you've just said, Angela, because there's so many tips that you've given there, specifically on writing the argumentative essay, and just on things like reading the questions. Like you said, the word not. I mean, the word not is just changes the question completely, and it's so important to have these tips, to know what to look for when you're actually doing these questions. So thank you so much. We've got lots of questions that are coming through. We please keep putting questions in the comments facility. We will get to them. What we would like to do before that, though, is I would like to ask Lindsay to also speak, and what she's going to be speaking about is, what do you do after the GED? So you graduate, you get your GED diploma. It's a really difficult task to get it, but what can you do afterwards? Where can you go? How far can you go with it? Can you study at university? Can you get a job with it? What is that all about, and how does that work? So I'm going to ask Lindsay to please take the stage.
Hi, Sean. Thank you. So, the GED is accepted by 98% of universities and colleges in America, and many universities and colleges around the world. If I look particularly at Africa, and if I start looking at South Africa, the Matriculation Board, or USAF, they are no longer giving GED students foreign conditional exemption. What that means is it's an extra hurdle for students wanting to go straight and study a degree. It doesn't mean, though, if you do a GED that you can't study further. What we are recommending for students is that they consider studying a higher certificate at NQF level 5, and there's a lot of institutions around South Africa that offer the higher certificate, as well as there's a lot of higher certificates available. And something to note is some of these institutions are even giving students transfer of credits into degree programs. So it's always important to contact the institution where you want to study, as well as the faculty, as to what the admission requirements are. You can also look at other courses, because obviously university degrees are not the only study options. If you're looking in Namibia, university acceptance is very much at the discretion of each individual university. So while we are engaging with all the different universities, it's very important to check with each university where you want to study as to whether they will accept your GED or not. Another option for students, and we recently ran a webinar on it, is the University of the People. It's an online fully accredited American university that accepts the GED for degree purposes. So what's wonderful about that is that many students are used to studying online when they're studying their GED, and you can just continue your studies through the University of the People. On the ged.org.za website, under webinars, you can actually go and look at the recording of the University of the People webinar. I think, Sean, from me, in terms of further studies, that's it. Just remember, if you're looking to enter the workplace and you need to show local recognition of the GED, in South Africa, you would apply to SAQA, South African Qualifications Authority, and in Namibia, you would apply to the Namibian Qualifications Authority. And I think, Sean, will be talking on our most recent announcement regarding SAQA tonight as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. I think it's really important that you, as you can see, that there are many avenues to study after you get your GED, overseas and local options. So go to ged.org.za, go to the webinar section. You'll find a whole range of different webinars that you can go and watch to learn all about that. Just before we go through all the questions, we do want to announce something. It's really exciting news. As a current GED student, you may not realize it yet, but when it comes time to graduating, then you'll realize how exciting this is. And that is that we as the GED have actually signed an agreement with SAQA. SAQA is the South African Qualifications Authority. And what that means is that instead of you as the GED graduate having to send your official credentials, your official transcript and your official diploma electronically to SAQA so that they can verify it in order to give you a certificate of equivalency, and that can cost you about 250 Rand, there's no need for that anymore. Now SAQA themselves have access to the GED database, and they can log in and verify whether you have actually graduated or not, and they can review your results so that they can decide whether they're going to give you a certificate of equivalency or not. So it's exciting news. If you are at that stage of having to apply to SAQA, you'll definitely benefit from this. A couple of questions that we received by email, even before we go to the questions that have been sent through the comments facility. I think I just want to start and comment on something that came through, and maybe Lindsay, you can just give some feedback on this. And that is, we always asked, at what age can I start studying my GED? And we say, well, you have to be 17 to be able to write the exam, which means that we recommend students start studying at the age of 16 so that they've got a full year to prepare before they write the exams. However, a lot of students aren't ready for that. They may be 15 years old, or they may even not have the skills, the mathematical skills and the literacy skills in order to start the GED. So how do we get you up to speed? So Lindsay, can you talk us through the option to get us up to speed before students start doing the GED? Sure,
definitely. So I would say the majority of students across Africa study for their GED using the Essential Ed online learning content. And part of that learning content, there's a course called TABE, or could almost be considered a pre-GED bridging course. TABE looks at, it's just two subjects, maths and science, and it starts at the basics of maths. Sorry, not maths and science, maths and English. It starts at the basics of maths and English, and then it gets the student up to the level they need to be to start the GED. Now, why is it important, or why is it beneficial to start with TABE, is because it gets a student's mindset and their thinking into the GED way of thinking. And as Angela mentioned, the GED makes very much use of critical thinking skills, needing to know how to apply their knowledge within a context as well as an argumentative essay. So TABE takes a student from a very basic level and then builds that student up to the level they need to be able to comfortably start studying the GED. If anyone does want to study this course, they're welcome to contact us and we will steer them in the direction of a provider that sells this online learning content for TABE.
Thanks, Lindsay. Angela, for you, a really important question, and I think it's quite a long answer. It's a multi-item answer, and that is, what do I need to do when I arrive at the testing center to write my test? Can I bring my bag with me? Can I bring some notes with me? Can I bring my calculator? What to expect? What aren't I allowed to bring with me? Can you just talk us through, from the time somebody arrives until they finish their exam, what is the experience that the student has?
Yes, Sean. So when you go to write your exam, all you need is your ID document. Now, please make sure that your ID document has got a photo on and that it's got your signature on. If you, I think, Sean, that the affidavit is still applicable now.
It is, yes.
Okay,
we've extended it, so you can continue using that.
Okay, so if you only have your birth certificate, then you can still go and have an affidavit done with your ID document, with your ID photo on and your signature, and you can take that with your birth certificate as identification. You cannot take anything else into the exam room. If you take anything with you, they will issue a locker and you can put it into a locker and lock it up. When you go in, they will give you a pen and a paper or a whiteboard and a felt pen. Please make sure that they give that to you. If they don't give it to you, ask for it. They have to give you that when you go in. They will take you into the testing room. You will get a tutorial. And also, please, guys, you cannot take a calculator with you. You cannot take your own personal calculator. The system actually has a calculator on, an online calculator. And you can actually go to ged.org.za under, I think it's under the tests. And if you go to math, there's a link that will take you to the tutorial for the calculator. And you can, before you even go for your exam, you can go and navigate around the calculator to make sure that you familiarize yourself with the calculator that they will give you in the exam. When you sit down, you will then be shown around the system. So there will be a few minutes before your exam starts where you will then be shown around how to navigate within the system. Okay, how to move forward, how to move back, how to share your screens. You can change the color of the screen. You can make it bigger. Okay, so there will be a few minutes so that you can familiarize yourself with that. And then the exam will start. There will be a facilitator. So you should always be able to see the facilitator. So if there's any problem with your system, put your hand up. Please don't leave the exam room. Put your hand up. The facilitator will come forward and have a look at the system. Okay, if the time is not running properly, or if it's frozen, or if you don't understand anything, something on the system, put your hand up. The facilitator will then come and assist you. When you're working through your questions, again, I cannot specify this enough. Read your question first. Make sure you understand your question. Then go and look for your answer. If you feel you're spending too long on one question, because remember, you might take so much time on questions in the beginning of this paper that sometimes you don't get to the end of the paper, and there might be really easy questions at the end of the paper that you're going to miss out on. Or you're going to be in such a frenzy at the end of the paper that you're going to answer easy questions wrong. So if you feel you're spending too much time on one question, you actually have the option to flag it for review. Flag it, but please don't leave it blank. Okay, pick an answer. You have a 25% chance of picking the correct answer if you don't have the opportunity to come back to that question. Pick an answer, flag it, move on. When you get to the end of the paper, you will have an option to go back, if you have some more time left, to go and review those questions. Okay, and then you're going to be a little bit calmer. You've answered quite a lot of the questions, and you can spend a little bit longer time on those ones that you feel you're not understanding very well. Also try and work by means of elimination. Okay, look at the 4 answers. Try and eliminate answers that could not possibly be part of this passage that you read, or part of this image or diagram or chart. Take them out. You might end up with 2 answers that could be correct. You've got a 50% chance of picking the correct answer. Cartoons, political cartoons, really difficult to understand what the cartoon is telling you. Please read, because they always they tell you what this cartoon is about. Look at when they introduce in that introduction, or when they explain what the cartoon is about, read that very carefully, because you will probably find a clue word there in the answers that is going to tell you what is the correct answer. So look for those clue words in your answer that is in the passage or that is in the cartoon. Graphs, guys, I cannot stress enough, please. If it is not specified in the graph, it cannot be your answer. Don't guess. Look, when you pick an answer, go look at the graph. Make sure that it is specified in the graph. Okay, and yes, and when you're finished with your paper, obviously you will then put your hand up, your facilitator will come through, and your facilitator will then take you out of the exam room. Your scores should be available pretty quickly, except for the English. The RLA, I think, takes up to 72 hours because they got to mark the essay. But the other subjects should be available on your GED.com profile quite quickly, within the same day. Let's put it that way. If it's not on your profile by the next day, then you can then contact us and we will then follow it up for you. But it should be available on your profile within the same day that you've actually written the exam.
Well, thanks, Angela. I think the tip of the day is, if you're panicking on a question, you don't know the answer, flag it so that you can come back to it, but answer it. As you said, you've got a 25% chance of getting it right. So I think it's an excellent tip. Just some ideas that I want to state. And the first one is the exams. The pass mark is 145 out of 200. If you get 144 for any of the papers, please, it's not worth asking for a remark. Why? Because firstly, the maths, the science, and the social studies papers are all multiple choice questions. The computer does not make mistakes when it's marking a question. And so if you got it wrong, you got it wrong. There's no point in wasting your money requesting a remark. When you're looking at your English and you're still not sure whether you should be asking for a remark, that's something that you can contact us to discuss. But 99% of the time, when we do a remark, it comes back that the mark is not increased. So it's actually, the majority of the time, not worth asking for a remark. Rather just rewrite the paper and pass it and do better. The second thing that I want to state is we often get questions, can we get extra time for the exam? Can we get a scribe for the exam? Can we get a reader for the exam? These are all called accommodations. And Lindsay, I'd like you just to talk through, if possible, the accommodations and the processes that are required to apply for accommodations, because you don't just get it, you have to apply for it.
Correct. So the accommodations team is a whole separate team that reviews every application on a case-by-case basis. When you're applying for accommodation, you need to apply with relevant and with up-to-date medical reports to justify the accommodations that you're requesting. Students can get such accommodations as extra time, a reader or a scribe, or if you need wheelchair access, anything like that. The best is to apply for the accommodation. Now, something to also note is when you're applying for an accommodation, it can take up to 30 working days for that accommodation application to be reviewed. And you need to have received the accommodation approval prior to booking for your test. So if you book for a test and then later get an accommodation approval, the test that you booked for before getting that response, it will not include the accommodation. Only tests booked after you received your accommodation approval will get the accommodations linked to them. The process to book accommodations is on the ged.org.za website. We've got the link that directs you to a very detailed page on the American GED.com website with the process, the requirements, the forms, everything that you need. Students are also welcome to contact us. Just something to also note, when you do have an accommodation and now you're ready to book for your test, the booking process is slightly different to a standard test booking process. You need to book through the accommodations team so that they can make sure that should you be getting a reader or a scribe, that they booked for that test and they'll be there, or that the testing center has the facilities to accommodate your accommodation. So we've always helped students if they need help, if they get stuck with booking when they have accommodations. The best is just to contact us and we can advise you on the best way to do it.
Thanks, Lindsay. So let's just go through some of the questions. Some of them I see have been answered, but I don't think everyone's necessarily going to be reading the comments. So firstly, at what age can you write the GED exams?
The minimum testing age for South Africa, Namibia, Kenya is 17 years old. For all other international countries, it's 18 years old.
So that's when you can write the exams, but at what age can you study? When can you start studying for them?
It's up to each student. It's a fine balance between starting and giving yourself enough time to study, as well as not giving yourself too much time that you get bored of the content. So we usually recommend when the student's 16.
Okay, so giving them 1 year is a fair amount of time. We are recording this webinar, and we will be emailing everybody that registered for the webinar the link to the recording, so you will be able to refer back at a later stage. So that's me answering the question. So I think, Lindsay, you've already answered this, but if you can answer it again. Will I be able to attend university with my GED?
You will need to first do almost a bridging course or an NQF level 5 higher certificate before applying for a degree program at a South African university. Namibian university, we recommend checking with each individual university. And American universities or international universities, it depends on the university. We know also Australia and New Zealand, they accept the GED qualification together with the SATs.
Thanks, Lindsay. Sure, Lindsay, a lot of questions for you tonight. Another one for you. Do you have any online facilities that can help a student prepare for their GED?
Yes, so majority of students through Africa study using the Essential Ed online learning content. The content's been approved by the GED in America, and students are welcome to contact our office, and we will send them contact details of recognized providers.
Okay, another one for you, Lindsay. Can I study fashion design?
We do know some students that have gotten into study, but again, it's very important that you check with each institution, especially fashion design, because there's different levels that you can study it at, and at different private institutions as well as government. So really, it's best to check.
All right. Now, do testing centers allow for extra time for learning difficulties? I think we've covered that in quite a lot of detail when you spoke about the accommodations. But if you need more information on that, it is available on ged.org.za, or you're welcome to email us on info@ged.org.za, and we'll be happy to guide you in the right direction.
I think something to note, Sean, is also, I know when I look at websites, I generally don't look at the frequently asked questions on a website. And we've really taken all questions that we all get asked on a daily basis and put them in the frequently asked questions as well as the answers. So we always recommend that students go and read through the frequently asked questions pages on the ged.org.za website, and they include such information as extra time, accommodations, and a lot of these questions.
Yeah, well, I personally refer to the frequently asked questions on a regular basis. So it's definitely worthwhile going to ged.org.za. It is the official GED website for Africa, and getting all that information. Angela, just so that you're not left out of the chat over here, here's a question for you. Are there online resources that one can use to practice for the argumentative essay?
Yes, on your GED.com profile. So when you start the GED, you will create a profile. How to create it is also on the ged.org.za website. There's step-by-step instructions how to create your profile. Once your profile has been created, there's a little tab at the top that says Study. If you click on that tab, then there is some practice questions on all the subjects, and there's some nice videos on the RLA writing where they explain to you how to actually write this argumentative essay. So there's really some nice resources on the GED.com profile.
Okay, that's excellent. And another one for you, Angela. Where can we get the practice tests from?
So you can do the GED Ready test. The Ready test, you can actually also on ged.org.za. If you look under the how to book a Ready test, there's a link on there that takes you, it also gives you step-by-step instructions, how to purchase the Ready test, and also how to retrieve the Ready test on your ged.com profile. So once you've purchased it, you will get a voucher number. You go onto your profile, you retrieve it on your profile, and you do the Ready test on your ged.com profile. I would like to comment on that Ready test. Guys, for me, a 145 is a pass, yes, in the exam. And the Ready test will say that you are likely to pass. I do not allow my students to write an exam if they have a score of 145. Okay, that is like passing by the skin on your teeth. So I prefer my students to have at least a 155 in order for them to book their exam in that region. If they only just pass, I would suggest that you go back, work a little bit more on those skills, revise them. And again, there's lots of online practice tests that you can also Google. Do as many practice tests as possible, and then go book your Ready test again. Make sure you're in the region of 155 before you book your exam.
Yeah, I think it's really great advice there. Thank you. Lindsay, will doing SATs benefit when applying to overseas universities?
It really depends on each university. As I said in the beginning, in America, 98% of universities and colleges accept the GED for admission purposes. And sometimes if your results are high enough, you can even give credits. So before jumping in and booking and writing your SAT tests, just check with the institution first, because you don't want to have to do extra if it's not a requirement.
Yeah, excellent. Good. Now, the next thing is actually, I want to just cover this quickly. And it's a comment that Maria's stated, that she's saying that she heard that the University of the People is a scam. Now, we as the GED have absolutely no link with the University of the People. We have nothing to gain from recommending them, but they are by far one of the best universities, one of the best online universities that you get. They currently have over 70,000 registered active students studying with them. 70,000. Now, there cannot be a scam when you've got 70,000 students studying from literally every country in the world and doing undergrad degrees and postgrad degrees. They are accredited by DEAC. DEAC is one of the best accrediting agencies in the world, by far better than most of them that come to my mind right now when I live here. And I really believe that it is an incredible university. They have made education affordable. How does it work? Well, you pay a small registration fee. And then when you study for your subjects, there is no cost to studying at all. You study for free. You only pay when you're ready to write each exam. So you literally pay per exam. In fact, it's very similar to the GED, where you actually just pay on a per exam fee, and you can study in any way and prepare for the exams in any way you want. I highly recommend the University of the People, and it's really, really excellent. Angela, which subject do you suggest we should start with?
Sean, I would say so, either social studies or English reading. I personally like my students to start with social studies. Social studies is not as long as English. So, and they use the same skills that they learn in social studies. They also use those skills in reading. And I find if the student has started with social studies, they've completed social studies, they've done the exam, they've passed the exam, it's always nice to know that you've got one exam under your belt, move on. If I find that the student is struggling a little bit with the social studies, that they've not learned or they're not where they should be with the skills, I then ask them to move on to reading. Don't go and do the exam. Move on to reading. Complete your reading, because like I said, you use those same skills in reading as what you use in social studies. Once you completed with the reading, go back to social studies. Do another practice test. See if you have increased those scores a bit. But yes, definitely I would let the students start with either reading or with social studies. If they've passed reading and social studies, science is a breeze. It's an absolute breeze. I wouldn't let them start with science at all. And then obviously math, I normally let the students move lastly onto math because it's quite a long program. And a lot of the students do struggle with the math. So if they know they've passed 3 subjects already, then it's easier for them to work on the math.
Okay, great. Lindsay, I'm going to let you answer this one, even though it's about Angela, and says, how can we contact Angela for tutoring?
So Angela is a tutor that's associated with LearnALot, learnalot.com. She offers online tutoring sessions, whether in groups or individually. The best would be to go on to www.learnalot.com/GED.
Or you can just email us on info@ged.org.za and we can put you in touch. Angela, I know you've covered this, but I think just cover it one more time, but very quickly, because we've got lots more questions. That is, how do I know when I'm ready to write the final test?
Your ready test. So for me.
No. How do I know when I'm ready to write the exam? How will you recommend that I prepare. Obviously, I study, but then I'm going to be doing a ready test. And
Yes.
that ready test is going to tell me if I'm ready to write the final exam or not.
Well, I mean, it's not a guarantee that you're going to pass the final exam, but yes, I would say that do the ready test. If you get a score of 155 and above, then yes, go for it. Go and book your exam.
Okay, excellent. So then I think, Lindsay, I think you already covered this, and that is, how long is the course? How long does it take to get my GED?
It really depends on how much you study. We always recommend for students to work on about 9 to 12 months. And in that way that you suitably have covered all the work and you've done sufficient prep to be likely to pass.
Okay. Angela, can you just answer the question of how long is an exam?
If you go to ged.org.za, again, there's a tab at the top that says the GED test. If you click on that tab, it will drop down to each subject, and that will tell you everything you need to know about each exam, what the exam covers, how long the exam is, etc.
Okay. Are there specific exam dates? Do I have to wait until October to write my exams?
No. You write the exam when you're ready for it. So you will also, again, ged.org.za. If you go to resources, drop down how to schedule your exam or schedule your test, and it will explain to you step by step how to schedule your test on your GED.com profile. You will then go and write it at your nearest Boston City campus and the testing center, and there's no specific dates. And also another thing, Sean, that I just want to mention quickly is there's also no deadline for writing your exams. Okay, so your profile will stay there forever. Okay, it's your online learning that has a deadline. But for writing your exams, I think you can write it, Lindsay, I don't know for how many years you can write it.
If I can just comment on that, until the next version of the GED exams do come out. They don't come out very often. The last set came out a couple of years ago. And so I'm sure everybody here is quite safe if they're planning on finishing their GED in the next 2-3 years or so. And essentially, exams are available literally every single day of the year. You can book exams whenever you want, and you can go and write them at over 45 centers around the country. In South Africa, there's obviously less centers in Namibia and Kenya, but you can write exams whenever you want, and that's a beauty of the GED because there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot less stress because of that. Another question, Angela, what does it mean? What does the student ID mean? Because it doesn't refer to my identity document. So what is the student GED?
That is your GED ID number. When you create a GED profile, it actually allocates an ID number to you. So when you go into your profile, in the top right-hand corner, there's a little profile tab. If you click on that tab, it'll drop down and it'll give you your GED ID number. That is not your personal ID number. That is how the GED will locate you in their system. And on your credentials, you will get your GED ID number, not your personal ID number.
And another question is, how do I access a course to prepare myself for the GED? I think if you're looking for a course for the GED, just email us on info@ged.org.za, and we will recommend some relevant courses for you. We're really running out of time, then we're going to be able to only take 1 or 2 more questions. Here's one for you, Lindsay. Is it a requirement to get a score of 165 out of 200 for all my subjects in order to be accepted to a college overseas?
It depends on the college and the qualification. 165 up is, they definitely, well, your chances of being accepted are much higher than if you just scrape on 145. The higher the mark you get, the more chance you get of getting a credit even at an American university.
Okay. Just very briefly, I've seen a few of the other questions. I just want to make a comment. The University of the People do accept students with just the GED. Since it is an overseas university, they're not interested in any other thing. They fully understand what the GED is and recognize how highly regarded it is. We have run out of time. This recording will be made available. Please follow us on our Facebook page on GED South Africa. Just search for GED South Africa. We will be posting the recording on that page. We do also post all relevant and up-to-date information on that page. So if you want to be kept up to date with what's happening with the GED, please follow us on GED South Africa. We also have a group where you can ask questions, and lots of people are there to answer those questions. If you search for GED Chat on Facebook, GED Chat, you can join that and you can ask all these questions that you've been asking tonight, and you should get an answer quite quickly. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've tried to get through as many questions as possible. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get through all of them. But if you do want to ask your specific questions and they weren't answered, just email us to info@ged.org.za and we will answer your questions. Have a good evening.